For 30 years, Jackson Reed dreamed of a quiet life on a patch of worthless land, but beneath the dust of his $500 plot lay a doorway to a truth that would rewrite history. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if the story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. For 3 decades, Jackson Reed had yearned to escape the gray sprawl of Chicago for a life rooted in the soil. At 58, he'd finally done it, trading city noise for a 5-acre plot in Oklahoma's Elmer County bought for a steal at $500 from a tax auction. His plan was simple: a trailer, a vegetable garden, a fence to mark his land. But beneath the cracked, dusty earth of his new home lay something that would shatter his modest dreams and rewrite humanity's understanding of its past and its future. The locals called the land cursed, a barren relic of the Dust Bowl that defied every attempt at revival. Yet Jackson saw it as his sanctuary, a place to build a legacy free from the grind of night shifts and urban clamor. Little did he know, the ground he stood on held secrets older than civilization itself. Each shovelful of dirt brought him closer to a discovery that would challenge everything he believed about the world. By the time he struck that strange stone, his quiet retirement was already unraveling into a cosmic odyssey. The Oklahoma sun scorched the barren landscape as Jackson paused, wiping sweat from his brow. His shovel ached in his calloused hands. The land was unforgiving, dry, rocky, and stubborn, a far cry from the fertile haven he'd imagined during his night shifts as a security guard. His trailer, a faded blue speck against the beige expanse, stood alone. The nearest neighbor was 2 miles away. The closest town, a gas station and diner, was a 20-minute drive. Dust clung to his boots, a gritty reminder of the land's resistance to his dreams. At 58, his body groaned with each swing of the shovel, protesting the decades of labor behind him. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional gust rattling brittle grass. He'd come here for peace, for independence, but the isolation felt heavier than he'd expected. Still, this was his kingdom, bought with every penny of his savings, and he'd make it his own. Nobody wanted this Dust Bowl scrap for a reason, old man, Jackson muttered, echoing the gas station clerk's words from his first day. Locals had smirked at his purchase, a city retiree sinking his savings into land that had defied farming since the 1930s. But for Jackson, it was freedom. His pension covered the basics, and the land was his outright. All he wanted was independence, a quiet life answering to no one. The endless Chicago nights guarding empty factories had worn him down, each shift a reminder of dreams deferred. Out here, under the vast Oklahoma sky, he could breathe, even if the soil fought every spade he sank into it. His trailer, though secondhand and creaking, was a castle compared to the cramped apartment he'd left behind. He'd build a garden, maybe a workshop, and live by his own rhythm. Whatever the locals thought, this land was his chance to finally belong to something real. He was digging his 12th fence post hole when his shovel hit something solid with a metallic clang. Kneeling, he brushed away soil, expecting another rock. Instead, he uncovered a smooth, curved surface of polished black stone etched with faint geometric patterns. A buried concrete slab, maybe? But as he dug further, a circular disc emerged 4 feet wide, its spirals glowing faintly under the midday sun. The air grew heavy as if the earth itself held its breath. Jackson's fingers traced the intricate designs, which seemed to pulse faintly under his touch, warm despite the cool soil. No cracks or seams marred the disc's surface. It was impossibly perfect, alien to the rough landscape. A shiver ran through him, not fear, but a strange pull, like a memory he couldn't place. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant to stay buried. Jackson's rational mind urged him to cover it and move on. Buried relics on rural land often meant trouble. Old dumps, graves, or artifacts that brought legal headaches. But curiosity, sparked by years of guarding empty factories, won out. By dusk, he'd cleared the disc's perimeter, revealing a seamless stone collar. It looked like a lid. Grabbing a crowbar from his shed, he pried at the edges. The Oklahoma sky had turned a deep amber, casting long shadows that made the stone's faint etchings seem to shimmer. His hands, rough from decades of labor, trembled slightly, not from fatigue, but from a strange anticipation, as if the disc itself was urging him to proceed. Each scrape of the crowbar echoed in the stillness, louder than it should have, like the land was holding its breath. He paused, glancing at his trailer, half expecting someone to emerge and tell him to stop. But he was alone, and the pull of the unknown was stronger than any warning. The disc resisted until the crowbar slipped into a hidden seam. A soft click echoed, followed by a hiss of escaping air that prickled Jackson's skin with an unnatural chill. The etched patterns on the stone flared blue, their spirals twisting inward as if alive, pulsing in rhythm with his racing heart. With the bone-deep grind that vibrated through his boots, the disc rotated counterclockwise and slid aside, revealing a dark shaft below. Cool, metallic-scented air wafted up, sharp and alien, like the aftermath of a lightning strike. Jackson stumbled back, heart pounding, his breath catching in his throat. Common sense screamed to run, to drive to town and report this to someone, anyone, with authority. But he'd spent his life on the sidelines, guarding others' secrets, never owning a moment of his own. This was his discovery, a pull stronger than fear urging him to step closer. The shaft's edge seemed to hum, its darkness not empty but alive with possibility, daring him to uncover what lay hidden. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he gripped the crowbar tighter, torn between the safety of the known and the mystery calling from below. The disc resisted until the crowbar slipped into a hidden seam, a faint click reverberating through the still Oklahoma air like a whispered secret. A hiss of escaping air followed, sharp and cold, carrying a metallic tang that stung Jackson's nostrils and sent a shiver down his spine. The stone's etched patterns ignited with a vivid blue glow, their intricate spirals twisting inward as if drawn by an unseen force, pulsing in sync with his quickening heartbeat. With a bone-deep grind that seemed to rumble from the Earth's core, the disc rotated counterclockwise, its movement impossibly smooth for something so ancient, and slid aside to reveal a dark, cylindrical shaft below. Cool air wafted up, its crisp, ozone-like scent alien yet strangely invigorating, as though the breath of another world had been trapped beneath his land. Jackson stumbled back, heart hammering against his ribs, his breath shallow and ragged. Common sense screamed to run, to pile into his truck and speed to town, to hand this impossibility over to someone, anyone, with the authority to handle it. But Jackson had spent his life on the sidelines, a security guard watching over others' lives, never claiming a story of his own. This was his discovery, a moment that felt destined, pulling him toward the unknown with a force stronger than fear. The shaft's edge seemed to hum faintly, its darkness not merely empty but alive, whispering of secrets waiting to be claimed. Sweat beaded on his brow as he clutched the crowbar, its weight grounding him against the vertigo of the moment. He stood frozen, torn between the safety of his ordinary life and the mystery that beckoned from below, its call as undeniable as it was terrifying. Stepping back to his trailer, Jackson's mind raced, piecing together a plan to face whatever lay beneath. He rummaged through his sparse belongings, grabbing his old security flashlight, its beam still strong despite years of use, and a half-full water bottle, warm from sitting in the sun. His cell phone, useless without signal in this remote corner of Elmer County, went into his pocket anyway, a reflex from a life tethered to routine. After a moment's hesitation, he retrieved his .38 revolver from a locked box under his cot, its cold steel a familiar comfort from his Chicago days, though he doubted it would be much use against whatever awaited. Slinging a small pack over his shoulder, he returned to the shaft, the blue glow from its depths now casting eerie shadows across the parched earth. The spiral staircase, carved from the same seamless black stone as the disc, descended in a gentle curve, each step perfectly contoured to his stride, as if designed for him alone. The craftsmanship was uncanny, smooth, unblemished, with no trace of wear despite the centuries it must have endured. As he descended, the air grew cooler, the metallic scent sharpening, and the faint hum from the stone seemed to resonate in his chest, steadying his nerves. At 30 feet, the staircase opened into an octagonal chamber, its walls towering above him, each panel adorned with intricate geometric patterns that mirrored those on the disc above. The designs lay dormant, their glow faded, but their complexity hinted at a purpose far beyond mere decoration. In the center of the chamber stood a solitary pedestal, crafted from the same black stone, its surface unmarred except for a hand-shaped depression at its top. The impression was unsettling, fingers slightly too long, the thumb angled in a way that felt almost, but not quite, human. Jackson's flashlight beam danced across the chamber, revealing no other exits, no visible mechanisms, just the silent weight of the unknown pressing in from all sides. He circled the pedestal, his boots echoing softly, the sound swallowed by the chamber's perfect acoustics. A faint warmth emanated from the stone, as if it were alive, waiting for something or someone to awaken it. His hand hovered over the depression, instinct urging him to act while fear held him back, whispering of consequences he couldn't yet imagine. The chamber seemed to watch him, its stillness charged with anticipation, as if this moment had been engineered across millennia for Jackson Reed alone. "This is how horror movies start," Jackson muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible in the cool, metallic-scented air of the underground chamber. His flashlight beam danced across the seamless black stone walls, catching the faint outlines of geometric patterns that seemed to shimmer just beyond perception. Despite the warning in his mind, a primal urge to flee, to seal the stone disc above and pretend he'd never found this place, an instinct pulled him forward, steady and unrelenting, like a compass needle drawn to true north. He stepped toward the pedestal at the chamber's center, its hand-shaped depression glinting faintly under his light, the proportions subtly wrong, fingers too long, thumb angled unnaturally. His heart thudded, a mix of dread and exhilaration as he hesitated, the revolver at his hip a cold reminder of the unknown he faced. Swallowing hard, Jackson extended his trembling hand, half expecting the stone to burn or shock him. Instead, his palm settled into the depression with eerie precision, as if it had been carved for him alone, the alien proportions molding perfectly to his skin. A low hum erupted from the pedestal, vibrating through his bones, and the chamber surged to life. The geometric patterns on the walls ignited with a radiant blue glow, their spirals and angles pulsing in perfect sync with his racing pulse, as if the room itself were alive and attuned to his presence. The air grew heavy, charged with an energy that prickled his skin and raised the hairs on his arms. Suddenly, the wall opposite the spiral staircase shimmered and dissolved with a sound like distant chimes, revealing a vast chamber beyond that defied all logic. It shouldn't exist, not. Jackson's flashlight barely penetrated the darkness, its beam swallowed by the immense space 30 feet high, with towering columns of black stone interwoven with veins of luminescent crystal that cast a soft, otherworldly glow. The chamber stretched far beyond what the modest 5 acres above could contain, a subterranean cathedral of impossible engineering. Concentric rings of sleek, curved structures, part stone, part transparent crystal, encircled a central platform, their surfaces alive with swirling, multicolored energies that moved like liquid light. There was no dust, no decay, the air felt pristine as if time had been suspended within these walls. Jackson's breath caught as he stepped forward, his boots echoing faintly on the polished floor. The chamber hummed with a low, resonant frequency, a sound he felt more than heard, vibrating deep in his chest. Along the walls, recessed alcoves held objects of varying shapes, spheres, prisms, and stranger forms, each glowing softly with internal light as if alive. A workstation near the platform flickered to life, its surface sprouting crystalline nodes that arranged themselves into intricate patterns, suggesting a control interface unlike anything human. Above it, a holographic projection materialized, displaying a three-dimensional map of his property, then zooming out to reveal a network of similar complexes across the continent, some pulsing with blue light, others dormant. Jackson's mind reeled. This wasn't a forgotten bunker or government lab, it was too ancient, too advanced. His eyes darted to the projection, which shifted to a timeline, its symbols unreadable yet somehow conveying a history stretching back thousands of years, predating any known civilization. The weight of the discovery pressed against him, a mix of awe and terror. He was a retired security guard, not an archaeologist or scientist. Yet the chamber had responded to him, as if it had been waiting. His hand, still tingling from the pedestal, bore a faint, glowing mark now. A spiral pattern mirroring the chamber's designs, etched into his skin like a brand. He backed away, overwhelmed, his gaze flickering between the glowing structures and the open wall. The chamber felt alive, watching him, its purpose vast and unknowable. A sudden chill ran through him as the projection flickered, showing a new image, a figure, humanoid but not human, its elongated head and iridescent skin suspended in a crystalline pod within a distant alcove. The sight rooted him to the spot, his flashlight trembling in his grip. Whatever he'd uncovered wasn't just a relic, it was a gateway to something far beyond his world, and it had chosen him to open it. The space was immense, a cavernous chamber stretching 30 feet high, its ceilings supported by towering columns of seamless black stone, their surfaces threaded with luminescent veins that pulsed like a living heartbeat, casting an ethereal glow across the vast expanse. At its heart, concentric rings of translucent crystal and polished stone formed a mesmerizing centerpiece, their surfaces alive with swirling energies, blues, violets, and silvers that danced in hypnotic patterns as if the very air was charged with purpose. Workstations, carved from the same dark stone, lined the walls, their interfaces aglow with intricate arrays of crystal nodes that shimmered and shifted, responding to some unseen command. No dust marred the pristine surfaces, no decay touched the flawless craftsmanship, defying the passage of centuries or perhaps millennia. The place felt waiting, not abandoned but poised, as if it had been preserved in a timeless vigil for this precise moment. A holographic projection flickered above one station, displaying a perfect rendering of Jackson's barren property, every rock and blade of brittle grass captured in uncanny detail. Before zooming out to reveal a sprawling network of similar complexes scattered across North America, some pulsing with vibrant light, others dormant in shadow. The display shifted again, lines of energy connecting the sites like a web woven across the continent, hinting at a purpose far beyond Jackson's understanding. The air thrummed with a low, resonant hum, not mechanical but organic, as if the chamber itself were alive, aware of his presence and assessing him. Along the walls, recessed alcoves held objects of unknown function, orbs, rods, and polyhedral shapes, each glowing softly with internal light, their surfaces etched with the same geometric patterns he'd seen on the surface disk. One workstation, larger than the others, projected a three-dimensional star map, constellations unfamiliar to Jackson, with a single point of light blinking insistently as if marking a destination or origin. The sheer scale of the technology overwhelmed him, its precision and elegance speaking of a civilization so advanced it made humanity's achievements seem like child's play. Yet, despite its grandeur, the chamber exuded an eerie intimacy, as if designed for a single occupant, someone meant to stand where Jackson now stood, to interact with systems that seemed to anticipate his every move. His reflection caught in a polished crystal panel, distorted slightly, showing a version of himself that felt both familiar and foreign, as if the chamber were already reshaping his perception of who he was. The weight of the discovery pressed against him, not just a physical space but a threshold to something that could alter everything he thought he knew about the world and his place in it. A chill ran through Jackson, goosebumps prickling his arms as he stood in the vast underground chamber. This wasn't a bunker or a forgotten government lab, it was too advanced, its seamless black stone and glowing crystal structures defying modern engineering. It felt ancient, as if it had waited through eons for this moment. The projection above the workstation flickered, shifting from a map of his property to a timeline that stretched back millennia, displaying sprawling complexes like this one constructed thousands of years ago, long before any known civilization had carved stone or forged metal. Symbols in an unknown script scrolled alongside images of robed figures overseeing their creation, their tools defying gravity. The air grew heavier, charged with an energy that made his teeth ache. Stunned, Jackson backed away, his boots scuffing the pristine floor, his mind reeling at the implications of a history no textbook had ever recorded. His shoulder bumped into a rectangular frame that hadn't been there moments before, its sudden presence jarring him upright. The frame's surface rippled like liquid mercury, coalescing into a mirror that reflected not quite him, a version with smoother skin, sharper cheekbones, and eyes that held an unsettling depth. The reflection's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile, and a voice, clear yet sourceless, echoed in his mind. Genetic signature recognized. Caretaker protocol initiated. Welcome, observer. Jackson's breath hitched, his reflection unmoving as he staggered back, the revolver in his belt suddenly feeling inadequate. The voice wasn't just sound, it carried weight like a command etched into his bones. Around him, the chamber seemed to respond, its glowing patterns pulsing faster, as if acknowledging his presence. A low hum vibrated through the floor, and the projection shifted again, now showing a network of similar facilities spanning the globe, their locations marked by pulsing blue nodes. Some glowed brightly, others lay dormant, but all were connected by shimmering lines that suggested a purpose far beyond his understanding. He reached out instinctively, and the mirror's surface rippled again, displaying fleeting images, cities that never existed, skies filled with unfamiliar stars, and faces that felt hauntingly familiar yet alien. Observer, the voice repeated, softer now, almost expectant, as if waiting for him to accept a role he hadn't chosen. Jackson's heart thudded against his ribs, torn between awe and dread. He was a retired security guard, not a scientist or hero, yet this place, this thing, had chosen him. The chamber's lights brightened, revealing alcoves along the walls, each holding objects that glowed with an inner fire, orbs, tablets, devices that defied description. Whatever this place was, it wasn't just a relic, it was alive, awake, and it knew him by name. Underscore 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 underscore. Jackson staggered up the spiral staircase, his legs heavy with the weight of what he'd seen below. The cool, metallic air of the chamber clung to his skin as he emerged into the fading Oklahoma sunset, the sky streaked with hues of orange and purple. He collapsed beside the open stone doorway, its blue glow casting eerie shadows across the barren earth. His chest heaved, each breath a struggle to reconcile the impossible technology he'd just witnessed with the mundane life he'd known for 58 years. His flashlight slipped from his trembling hand, rolling into the dust, its beam flickering like his faltering sense of reality. His phone buzzed in his pocket, shattering the silence. His daughter, Sarah, calling from Denver. He fumbled to answer, the screen's glow harsh against the twilight. Dad, the bank says you're 3 months behind on payments, she said, her voice thick with concern, though edged with the familiar exasperation that had defined their talks since her mother's death. That land's worthless. Sell it, come to Denver. You could be near me, the grandkids. Jackson's eyes drifted to the glowing shaft, its light pulsing as if alive. I can't, Sarah, he rasped, his throat dry from dust and disbelief. Something's come up. The words felt inadequate, a flimsy shield against the truth. His $500 plot hid a secret that made his financial woes seem laughably small. What's come up? Sarah pressed, her lawyer's skepticism cutting through. There's nothing out there, Dad. You're isolated, your heart's not great, and the bank's ready to take the trailer. He winced, the weight of his debts crashing back. $15,000 for the trailer, $7,000 for the well, $4,500 for the septic system, all bleeding his savings dry. But the chamber below, with its ancient technology and cryptic journal, promised something greater than money. It's temporary, he lied, staring at the doorway. I've got opportunities. Opportunities. Sarah's voice rose, sharp with worry. In the middle of nowhere? Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on? He wanted to tell her about the stone disk, the glowing patterns, the voice in his mind calling him observer. But how could he explain a discovery that defied history, that tied his blood to a purpose he barely understood? The journal's words echoed, Thomas Reed, 1872 to 1957. The next observer. His great-great-grandfather's legacy, now his burden. I'll call you tomorrow, he said, cutting her off as the phone buzzed with her immediate redial. He silenced it, guilt twisting in his gut. The sunset bled into dusk, the glow from the shaft intensifying, as if urging him back. His financial ruin, Sarah's worry, the life he'd planned, they all felt distant, overshadowed by the pull of the unknown. He rose, dusting off his jeans, and retrieved his lantern and camera from the trailer. Whatever lay below, he'd document it, not as a security guard, but as the journalist he'd once dreamed of being. The worthless land he'd bought wasn't just his home, it was his destiny, and he couldn't turn away. I can't, Jackson replied, his voice steady but laced with a quiet intensity, his gaze fixed on the glowing shaft that pulsed with an otherworldly blue light, its eerie radiance painting the cracked Oklahoma earth in shifting shadows. Something's come up. He hung up, the sharp click of his ancient flip phone silencing Sarah's protests mid-sentence, her exasperated pleas about his overdue bills and the worthless land fading into the low drone of the trailer's struggling air conditioner. Financial ruin loomed like a storm on the horizon, 3 months behind on credit card payments, the bank's letters piling up unopened on his fold-out table threatening to seize the trailer he'd sunk his last $15,000 into. Yet those worries, once crushing, now felt trivial, like distant echoes drowned out by the hum emanating from the open stone doorway. The discovery beneath his $500 plot had rewritten his reality, rendering his mundane struggles insignificant against the vast, impossible truth waiting below. A fire kindled in his chest, a mix of fear and purpose he hadn't felt since his youth, when he dreamed of adventure before life chained him to night shifts and time clocks. He moved quickly, driven by a need to act before doubt could creep in. Rummaging through the trailer's cluttered storage bins for supplies suited to the unknown, he grabbed a high-powered LED lantern, its beam strong enough to cut through the shaft's oppressive darkness, and a digital camera, slightly outdated but functional, to capture evidence of what he could scarcely believe. A worn leather notebook, its pages yellowed from years of half-finished ideas, joined the pile, his chance to document a story no one else could claim. He added a spare battery pack, a half-empty box of energy bars, and a battered thermos filled with water, each item a tether to the practical world he was leaving behind. His old .38 revolver, a relic from his security days, went into his belt, its cold steel a small comfort despite its likely uselessness against whatever awaited. Every choice was deliberate, guided by instincts honed over decades of watching, waiting, and preparing for threats he could name. But this was beyond training, beyond reason, a leap into a mystery that felt both alien and strangely personal. Jackson stepped outside, the Oklahoma dusk settling heavy, the sky bruised with streaks of orange and purple. The open shaft loomed ahead, its metallic-scented air wafting up like a challenge, sharp and electric, reminiscent of ozone after a storm but laced with something indefinable. The blue glow pulsed in time with his heartbeat, as if the facility below knew him, recognized him in a way that sent a shiver down his spine. He slung the pack over his shoulder, its weight grounding him, and approached the stone doorway. The spiral staircase descended into shadow, each step carved with unnatural precision, inviting yet forbidding. "This is bigger than me," he whispered, the words half prayer, half promise, spoken to the empty land that had betrayed its secrets. Memories flickered. Nights spent guarding silent factories, his daughter's childhood laughter, the ache of losing his wife 5 years ago. Those moments had defined him, but they felt like another man's life now. The pull from below was stronger, a call woven into his bones, urging him to claim a purpose he'd never dared imagine. He'd spent 58 years on the sidelines, protecting others' dreams, never daring to chase his own beyond this modest plot. But this discovery, his discovery, was a door to something greater, a chance to rewrite his story. The glow intensified as he lingered at the edge, its rhythm almost a voice, daring him to trust it. Sweat beaded on his brow, not from the heat but from the weight of the choice, retreat to the safety of a failing life or step into the unknown. With a final glance at the trailer, its faded blue a symbol of the ordinary he was abandoning, Jackson tightened his grip on the lantern. The revolver pressed against his hip, a reminder of the risks, but it was the notebook in his pack that felt heaviest, a blank slate for a truth that could change everything. "No turning back," he muttered, his voice swallowed by the vastness of the night. The stars above seemed to watch, indifferent yet expectant, as he took his first step down the staircase. Each echo of his boots on the stone carried the weight of a life left behind, a dream of quiet independence traded for a mystery that refused to be ignored. The shaft's darkness enveloped him, but the glow below promised answers, and Jackson Reed, retired security guard and accidental explorer, descended again, ready to meet whatever waited in the depths. The chamber had changed since Jackson's last descent, its transformation both subtle and profound, as if the facility itself had awakened to his presence. New corridors yawned open where solid walls once stood, their edges smooth and seamless, carved from the same polished black stone that defied earthly craftsmanship. Interfaces along the walls pulsed with a vibrant blue luminescence, their crystal nodes flickering like stars in a synchronized dance, responding to some unseen command. A holographic projection materialized above a central console, its three-dimensional map of the complex shifting to highlight a path deeper into the facility, guiding Jackson with an insistent glow. He followed, heart pounding, as the walls around him seemed to breathe, sliding and reconfiguring with a soft hum, revealing new passages that curved into darkness. The air grew cooler, thicker, carrying that same metallic tang, now laced with a faint vibration that thrummed through his bones. After navigating a labyrinth of shifting stone, the path opened into a circular chamber unlike anything he'd seen. Its walls, composed of liquid metal, flowed in constant motion, rippling like mercury yet holding a perfect, unbroken form that shimmered under the ambient light. At the room's center stood a throne-like chair, sculpted from the facility's ubiquitous black stone, its surface inlaid with glowing circuitry that pulsed in time with the walls. Resting on the chair was a leather-bound journal, its weathered cover etched with the same intricate spiral patterns that adorned the facility, each line glowing faintly as if infused with the same energy. Jackson approached, his fingers trembling as he traced the spirals, feeling a warmth that seemed to recognize his touch. The journal's inscription, written in elegant, faded ink, read, "To the next observer, my watch has ended." Thomas Reed, 1872 to 1957. The name struck him like a thunderbolt, his great-great-grandfather, a man he'd known only through family stories, now tied to this impossible place. Beside the journal, a small metallic cube rested, its surface smooth yet shifting subtly, as if alive. The throne's armrests bore hand-shaped depressions identical to the one in the antechamber, but these glowed with a deeper intensity, inviting him to connect. Above, the liquid metal walls flickered, displaying fleeting images, star capes, ancient cities, and faces that might have been human but weren't quite, before stabilizing into a projection of the Oklahoma landscape with his property at its heart, pulsing like a beacon. The room seemed to hum with purpose, as if it had waited centuries for this moment for him. Jackson's breath caught as he realized the journal wasn't just a record but a guide, its pages promising answers to questions he hadn't yet dared to ask. The facility, alive and aware, was no mere relic. It was a legacy, and it had chosen him as its next keeper. The disc resisted until the crowbar slipped into a hidden seam. A soft click echoed through the still Oklahoma air, followed by a hiss of escaping air that carried a sharp, metallic tang, like ozone after a storm. The etched patterns on the stone disc flared with a brilliant blue glow, their intricate spirals twisting inward as if alive, pulsing in sync with Jackson's racing heart. With a bone-deep grind that reverberated through his boots and into his core, the disc rotated counterclockwise, its seamless stone surface scraping against the earth before sliding aside to reveal a dark, cylindrical shaft below. Cool air wafted up, its alien scent prickling Jackson's skin and raising the hairs on his arms. He stumbled back, heart pounding, his breath shallow and ragged in the fading sunlight. Common sense screamed to run, to pile into his truck and drive to town, to report this impossible find to someone, anyone, with the authority to handle it. But Jackson had spent his life on the sidelines, 30 years guarding empty factories, protecting others' secrets while his own dreams withered. This was his discovery, a moment that felt inexplicably personal, as if the land itself had chosen him. The shaft's edge seemed to hum faintly, its darkness not empty but heavy with purpose, whispering of secrets buried for centuries. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he gripped the crowbar tighter, torn between the safety of the known and a pull stronger than fear urging him to step closer. As he stood frozen, a strange certainty settled over him, like a memory he hadn't lived. This wasn't random. The land, bought for a mere $500, had called to him across decades, its isolation no accident. He thought of the journal he'd later find, penned by Thomas Reed, his great-great-grandfather, who had stood at this same threshold in 1897. Guided by vivid dreams of spiraling patterns and a voice without words, Thomas had uncovered this very shaft, becoming an observer, a guardian of a facility built by the enigmatic architects to monitor humanity's progress. The journal would reveal that observers, selected by rare genetic markers, were scattered across the globe, each tied to a hidden station like this one. Thomas had kept the truth from his family, manipulating records and using shell companies to ensure this barren plot remained untouched, a dormant relic waiting for the next in line. Jackson, with his unassuming life and modest ambitions, was that descendant, his blood carrying the markers that made this moment inevitable. The glowing patterns on the disc seemed to recognize him, their light softening as if in welcome, urging him to embrace a legacy he could barely comprehend. He took a shaky step forward, the crowbar slipping from his hand to clatter on the stone. The shaft loomed, its spiral staircase descending into shadow, each step a promise of answers or a point of no return. Whatever lay below, Jackson knew it was tied to his blood, his past, and a purpose that had been waiting for him since before his family's name was written in history. The leather-bound journal, its pages brittle and yellowed, lay open on Jackson's weathered oak table, revealing truths that unraveled the very fabric of his existence. Each entry, written in a precise, almost mechanical script, detailed how his life had been meticulously orchestrated by forces beyond his comprehension. His impulsive decision to purchase the desolate plot of land at the edge of Willow Creek hadn't been a stroke of luck or intuition, it was a calculated move in a grand design. The auction where he'd acquired the property for a fraction of its value was no coincidence. The suspiciously low price had been engineered to ensure he, and only he, would claim it. Even the land itself, with its barren, unyielding soil that resisted every attempt at cultivation, was part of the scheme, a deliberate choice to keep him tethered to this place, to this purpose. As Jackson turned the pages, his heart pounded with a mix of dread and fascination. The journal spoke of an ancient intelligence referred to only as the architect, a force that operated through subtle manipulations across generations. It wasn't just his life that had been shaped, the architect's influence stretched back decades, guiding his family's choices, their triumphs, and their failures, all to converge on this moment. A new entry materialized on the page before his eyes, the ink seeming to rise from the paper itself. The cycle nears completion. Seek Maxwell Reed, Denver. The words sent a chill through him. Maxwell, his nephew, was the last person he'd expected to see named in this cryptic text. Jackson's mind raced as he recalled Maxwell, a brilliant but reclusive scientist working at Quantum Resonance Technologies, a cutting-edge research firm in Denver. The journal's next page flickered, and a faint, holographic projection emerged, casting a ghostly light across the room. It showed Maxwell in his lab, surrounded by sleek equipment humming with energy. He was hunched over a device that pulsed with an eerie, rhythmic glow, its design uncannily reminiscent of the artifacts Jackson had unearthed on his land, relics he dismissed as ancient oddities. The projection revealed a truth that made Jackson's stomach churn. Maxwell, unaware of the architect's influence, was recreating its technology. Each experiment, each breakthrough was a step toward completing a cycle that had been set in motion long before either of them was born. The journal hinted at the stakes. Maxwell's work at Quantum Resonance Technologies was no ordinary scientific pursuit. His latest project, a quantum resonance amplifier, was on the verge of unlocking energies that could reshape reality itself or unleash chaos if mishandled. The architect had guided Maxwell's curiosity, his relentless drive, just as it had guided Jackson to this land. But why? What was the cycle, and what role did they play in its completion? The projection shifted, showing glimpses of a future where Maxwell's device activated, its energy rippling across the globe, aligning with the artifacts buried beneath Jackson's soil. The images were fragmented, cities aglow with strange light, skies fractured with impossible geometries, but they carried a weight of inevitability. Jackson closed the journal, his hands trembling. He knew he had to find Maxwell, to warn him, or perhaps to stop him. Denver was a long journey from Willow Creek, and the answers lay with his nephew, who was unknowingly carrying the architect's legacy forward. The barren land, the auction, the journal, they were all pieces of a puzzle that Maxwell's work would complete. As Jackson prepared to leave, the journal's final entry burned in his mind: the architect watches. The cycle must close. Whatever awaited in Denver, it was no longer just about his land or his life. It was about a purpose that spanned time itself. As Jackson read the ancient inscriptions etched into the chamber's walls, the facility shuddered with a discordant vibration, a low hum that reverberated through the reinforced steel and concrete. The air grew heavy, charged with an unnatural energy that set his nerves on edge. A wall-mounted display flickered to life, its screen casting a cold blue glow across the dimly lit room. It showed a government-issued SUV speeding along the desolate access road, its dust trail billowing in the twilight, 2 miles out and closing fast. The word security protocol initiated flashed in bold red letters, accompanied by a shrill alarm that pierced the silence. Jackson's pulse quickened. He glanced at the display again, where another alert pulsed: containment breach detected. His mind raced, retracing his steps. Could it have been his phone? He'd snapped photos of the cryptic symbols earlier, unaware that the facility's sensors might interpret the flash or the device's signal as a violation. The realization hit him like a cold wave: his actions might have triggered the lockdown. He turned to the centerpiece of the chamber, the throne, an imposing structure of sleek metal and pulsating conduits, its surface etched with glyphs that seemed to shift under scrutiny. It wasn't just a seat, it was a nexus of power, a complex interface that thrummed with latent energy. Hesitant but driven by the escalating urgency, Jackson approached it. The throne's armrests gleamed with embedded panels, their lights pulsing in sync with the facility's vibrations. Steeling himself, he placed his hand on the central node. A sharp prick startled him as the interface sampled his blood, a thin bead of crimson vanishing into the machine. The throne hummed louder, its lights flaring as a synthetic voice intoned, "Observer verified. Emergency protocol authorized." A holographic display materialized above the throne, projecting a cascade of data. Coordinates, biometric readings, and a countdown timer ticking down from 10 minutes. Jackson's breath caught. Whatever he'd just activated, there was no turning back now. The facility's secrets were awakening, and he was at their heart. A holographic menu flickered into existence above Jackson's wrist device, its translucent interface glowing faintly in the dim light of the abandoned farmhouse. Each option hovered in the air, but one pulsed with an urgent, rhythmic glow: temporal displacement field. His pulse quickened as he glanced out the cracked window. The black SUV was closing in, its tires kicking up clouds of dust along the rural road, its tinted windows concealing the agents, or worse, inside. They'd been tracking him for days, ever since he'd stolen the prototype from the lab. Now, with no time to second-guess, Jackson's fingers danced across the device, selecting the pulsing option. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the wooden floorboards and rattling the dusty glass in the window panes. He activated the field. A shimmering dome of distorted light erupted from the device, expanding outward in a perfect sphere that enveloped the entire property, farmhouse, sagging barn, and the overgrown fields beyond. The world outside the dome seemed to warp, colors bleeding into one another as the temporal field took hold. The SUV, now mere yards from the property line, slowed to a surreal crawl, its headlights stretching into elongated beams, frozen in a molasses-like flow of time. Inside the dome, Jackson's breath steadied. The temporal displacement field had worked, just as the lab's classified schematics had promised. But the relief was fleeting. The device on his wrist chirped a warning, its display flashing a countdown: 47 hours, 59 minutes, 32 seconds. That was all he had before the field collapsed, snapping time back to its normal flow and leaving him exposed to the SUV's occupants, whoever they were. The prototype in his backpack, a sleek metallic orb that could rewrite history itself, was worth killing for. Jackson knew it. The lab's security had known it too, before he'd slipped past them. Now, he had 48 hours to figure out his next move: decrypt the orb's locked functions, find a buyer, or destroy it before it fell into the wrong hands. Outside, the SUV's driver, faceless behind the windshield, remained suspended in time, unaware of the dome's effect. But Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that when the field dropped, those agents would be ready and they wouldn't hesitate. Jackson gripped the steering wheel of his weathered sedan, the hum of the engine a steady pulse as he barreled down the desolate highway toward Denver. The journey, clocking in at just under 5 hours, felt longer under the weight of what he carried. In his pocket, a metallic cube, smooth, heavy, and unnervingly cold, pressed against his thigh. It had come from the facility, a clandestine lab buried in the desert, where he'd witnessed things that defied explanation. Machines that whispered in code, screens flickering with impossible geometries. The cube, no larger than a die, had dispensed $2,000 in crisp bills at an ATM in a ghost town gas station, as if it could bend the world to its will. Jackson hadn't dared touch it since, but its presence was a constant reminder of the forces he was entangled with. Beside him on the passenger seat, the journal lay open, its pages alive with text that shifted as he drove. It wasn't paper, not really, more like a living archive, its words updating en route with cryptic warnings and fragmented data. The journal had been Maxwell's, a rogue scientist whose research had sparked this chaos. Now it was Jackson's burden, feeding him scraps of insight about the network. A sprawling, invisible web of dormant nodes buried across the globe. The journal's latest entry pulsed with urgency. Maxwell's experiments were waking these nodes, one by one, like lights flickering on in a long-abandoned city. Each activation sent ripples through the network, stirring its defense protocols, ancient, reality-altering technologies designed to protect the system at any cost. The implications were chilling. The network, the journal hinted, wasn't just a machine. It was a failsafe, built by an unknown hand to preserve a delicate balance. Maxwell's reckless pursuit of forbidden knowledge, his attempts to harness the node's power, threatened to tip that balance. The defense protocols, once triggered, could erase anything deemed a threat, a person, a city, an entire timeline. Jackson's mind raced as he recalled the journal's description of the tech. It didn't destroy in the conventional sense. It rewrote. A targeted advancement like Maxwell's research could vanish as if it had never existed, along with anyone tied to it. The cube in his pocket, the journal warned, was a key, one that could either unlock the network's secrets or provoke its wrath. Outside, the Rocky Mountains loomed under a bruised sky, their peaks casting jagged shadows across the road. Jackson's knuckles whitened as he glanced at the journal again. A new line had appeared, node activation detected, Denver perimeter. Neutralization imminent. His heart sank. Denver was his destination, where Maxwell's last known lab was hidden in an abandoned warehouse. If the network was already responding, he was walking into a trap. The cube seemed to hum faintly as if sensing the danger, and Jackson wondered if it was guiding him or luring him to his end. Whatever Maxwell had unleashed, it was bigger than one man, one cube, or one city. The network was waking, and with it, a power that could reshape reality itself. Jackson pressed the gas pedal harder, the weight of the cube and the journal pulling him toward an uncertain fate. At Quantum Resonance Technologies, Jackson stood in the sleek, sterile lab, its walls lined with humming quantum processors and holographic displays. He faced Maxwell, the company's brilliant but skeptical lead researcher, whose sharp gaze and folded arms radiated doubt. Maxwell's frustration with his stalled project, a quantum device meant to stabilize energy fields for instantaneous data transfer, was palpable, his notes strewn across the lab table like a battlefield of failed equations. Jackson, undeterred, rolled up his sleeve to reveal the glowing observer mark on his forearm, a mesmerizing geometric pattern of interlocking spirals and fractals that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light. The sight drew a sharp breath from Maxwell, who instinctively glanced at his own forearm, where a faint, dormant version of the same mark lay etched in his skin, unnoticed until now. Jackson's voice was steady as he explained that the marks connected them to a shared purpose, a legacy of discovery beyond conventional science. To prove it, he placed the enigmatic cube, a relic of unknown origin he'd brought with him, on the table. Its metallic surface shimmered, then seamlessly reshaped itself, collapsing and reforming into an exact replica of Maxwell's quantum device, down to the intricate lattice of its core. A holographic blueprint materialized above it, projecting a cascade of data and schematics that pinpointed the precise flaw in Maxwell's design, an overlooked resonance frequency that destabilized the energy field. The blueprint not only solved the core problem but also suggested enhancements that could push the device's capabilities far beyond its original scope, promising breakthroughs in quantum communication. Maxwell's skepticism wavered, his eyes darting between the cube, the blueprint, and his own dormant mark as the weight of this revelation began to reshape his understanding of his work and his place in a larger, unseen design. The sudden blare of alarms shattered the tense silence in Maxwell's lab, where he and his team had been poring over the cryptic journal of Andrew Reed. Before they could process the data from Maxwell's morning test, a quantum entanglement experiment that had unexpectedly spiked energy readings, a security breach sent the facility into lockdown. Government agents from the Department of Energy's Advanced Research Division, clad in tactical gear and moving with ruthless precision, stormed the building. Leading them was Eliza Carter, a sharp-eyed operative with a reputation for unrelenting determination. Maxwell's test had inadvertently triggered a hidden node in the global quantum network, a fail-safe read had embedded years ago, alerting the authorities to their unauthorized research. With seconds to spare, Maxwell, clutching the journal, led his team to a concealed secure elevator tucked behind a false panel in the server room. As the steel doors hissed shut, the journal's latest decrypted page flickered on Maxwell's tablet, revealing a bombshell. Eliza Carter was their half-sister, another of Andrew Reed's children, and the third observer in their father's enigmatic prophecy. Her presence wasn't a coincidence. She'd been tracking them, driven by her own fragmented memories of Reed's experiments and her role in his shadowy legacy. The elevator descended into the bowels of the facility, the team grappling with the revelation that their pursuer was family, bound to them by blood and a dangerous destiny neither side fully understood. In the heart of Oklahoma, the temporal field generated by the facility remained stable, its invisible boundaries exerting a subtle yet profound influence on the fabric of time itself. The field enveloped the surrounding area, creating a localized distortion that slowed the relentless circling of military helicopters overhead, their blades slicing through the air in a sluggish, almost dreamlike rhythm. Pilots exchanged confused glances, their instruments flickering as the temporal anomaly disrupted their navigation systems. On the ground, the facility had undergone a dramatic transformation since its initial activation. Once a modest research outpost, it had expanded into a sprawling complex, its central platform now a fortified hub pulsating with quantum energy. At its core stood 3 gleaming pedestals, each intricately designed to house an observer, a quantum anchor essential to stabilizing the temporal network. These pedestals, etched with circuits that glowed faintly blue, hummed with latent power, awaiting their designated operators. The network itself, a global web of quantum nodes painstakingly established over decades, teetered on the brink of collapse. Maxwell's test, a daring and unsanctioned experiment conducted by the facility's lead scientist, had triggered an unprecedented cascade of activations across the globe. From the icy research stations of Antarctica to the hidden bunkers beneath Tokyo, nodes flared to life, their synchronized pulses threatening to unravel the delicate balance of causality. The test had been intended to probe the limits of quantum entanglement across time, but its consequences were far greater than Maxwell had anticipated. Without the presence of 3 observers, individuals uniquely attuned to the quantum field, the network's unchecked energy would surge beyond control. History itself hung in the balance, vulnerable to a catastrophic rewrite that could erase not only the advancements of quantum research but the very events that had shaped the modern world. Entire decades of scientific progress, from the discovery of quantum computing to the development of temporal manipulation, risked being wiped from existence, leaving humanity stranded in an altered reality with no memory of what had been lost. Inside the facility, tension crackled like static. Scientists scrambled to recalibrate the system, their faces illuminated by the frantic glow of monitors displaying erratic data streams. Alarms blared, warning of critical instabilities in the temporal field. Maxwell, standing at the edge of the platform, stared at the empty pedestals, his expression a mix of defiance and dread. He had pushed the boundaries of science further than anyone before him, but the cost of his ambition was becoming clear. The world outside the facility was beginning to feel the ripples of the crisis, reports of déjà vu, unexplained disappearances, and temporal anomalies were flooding in from across the globe. If the observers weren't found and positioned soon, the network's ascending chaos would consume everything, leaving nothing but a void where the future once stood. Eliza emerged from the shimmering veil of a temporal corridor, its pulsating energy dissipating behind her with a faint hum that echoed in the vast chamber. Her breath caught as she stepped onto the cold, obsidian floor, her eyes narrowing with the skepticism that had defined her years as a field operative. She had dismissed the cryptic summons as a potential trap, a fabrication woven by those who sought to manipulate the observer's legacy. Yet, as her gaze swept across the chamber, an ancient, cavernous sanctum adorned with luminescent glyphs that pulsed in rhythm with her own heartbeat, her doubts began to fracture. Carved into her wrist, the unmistakable observer mark, a spiraling sigil that had branded her since childhood, glowed faintly, resonating with the chamber's energy. It was no coincidence, this place was tied to her, to all of them. In the center of the chamber rested a pedestal, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift under scrutiny. Atop it lay the journal, an artifact of impossible depth, its leather-bound cover worn yet unyielding, as if it had endured centuries while remaining untouched by time. Eliza approached cautiously, her fingers trembling as she opened its pages. What she found stole her breath. A meticulous chronicle of her life, woven with unnerving precision. Classified mission reports she had authored in secrecy, their ink still fresh. Childhood drawings of starry skies and cryptic symbols, scrawled in her own unsteady hand. Even fleeting moments she had never shared, her first encounter with the observer mark, the weight of its unspoken promise. Each page mirrored the legacy she had inherited, a lineage of guardians tasked with preserving the delicate threads of time. The journal was not merely a record. It was a testament to her place within a grand, unbroken continuum, linking her to Jackson and Maxwell, whose own marks had guided them here. With only 19 minutes remaining, displayed on a holographic timer hovering above the chamber, its countdown relentless, the trio stood at their respective pedestals, each positioned at the points of a triangular nexus. The air thrummed with anticipation, the weight of their shared purpose pressing against them. Jackson, the steadfast steward, bore the resolve of one who had safeguarded the Observer's principles through decades of turmoil. His weathered hands rested on his pedestal, grounding the moment in the unyielding duty that had shaped him. Maxwell, the visionary innovator, stood with a spark of restless curiosity, his mind already racing toward the possibilities of the temporal energies converging around them. His pedestal hummed under his touch as if responding to his ambition to push beyond the known. Eliza, her skepticism now tempered by the undeniable truth of the journal and the chamber, brought her cautious pragmatism to the triad. Her pedestal seemed to pulse in sync with her heartbeat, acknowledging her role as the skeptic who questioned, tested, and ensured their path was not led astray. Together, they activated the nexus, their perspectives merging in a symphony of intent. Jackson's stewardship anchored them, a foundation of loyalty to the Observer's ancient charge. Maxwell's innovation propelled them, a daring leap toward reshaping the boundaries of time. Eliza's caution balanced them, a steady hand to navigate the perils of their undertaking. As the chamber's glyphs flared brighter, the temporal energies swirled, binding their wills into a singular force. They were no longer individuals but a collective, their marks and their choices forging a new chapter in the legacy they had sworn to uphold. With the timer ticking down, they stood united, ready to face whatever lay beyond the convergence of their pasts and futures. The moment their authentication codes synchronized with the network, a ripple cascaded through the facility's core systems, halting the defense protocols in an instant. It was as if the entire complex held its breath, its automated sentinels disarmed not by force but by recognition. The facility didn't shut down, it awakened. Lights flickered to life in long-dormant corridors, and a low hum resonated through the walls, signaling the activation of something ancient yet alive. The platform, a marvel of engineering hidden beneath layers of secrecy, began to unfold its true nature. It was no mere machine or archive, it was the embodiment of the architect's vision, a transformative legacy designed to elevate humanity beyond its fractured state. This was not a gift freely given, however. Access to its boundless potential hinged on the judgment of the Observer's enigmatic entities whose criteria remained shrouded in mystery. Only those deemed worthy could unlock the platform's secrets, and as the network pulsed with newfound purpose, it became clear that the trial had only just begun. The facility's awakening stirred something deeper within its architecture, as if the very walls were encoded with intent. Holographic interfaces shimmered into existence, projecting fragments of the architect's philosophy: unity through understanding, evolution through sacrifice. The platform's systems, now fully online, revealed a labyrinth of trials and data vaults, each layer guarded by algorithms that seemed to anticipate human thought. The observers, whether artificial or something more, watched silently, their presence felt in the precision of every response, every challenge. For those who had breached the network, the stakes were no longer survival but transcendence. The architects had left behind a crucible, one that would forge humanity's future or deem it unworthy of their legacy. 6 months after Jackson's radical transformation of his once barren Oklahoma land, the site had become a verdant marvel, teeming with crops that defied agricultural norms, plants thriving in defiance of soil chemistry and climate constraints. His fields, now a patchwork of luminescent greens and vibrant golds, yielded produce that was not only sustainable but also nutrient-dense beyond scientific expectation. This improbable oasis served as the central hub for a network of 26 global facilities, each replicating Jackson's model under his meticulous oversight. His leadership was both pragmatic and visionary, ensuring that the Oklahoma site remained a beacon of innovation while coordinating the seamless integration of the other facilities across diverse ecosystems. From the arid dunes of the Sahara to the frostbitten plains of Siberia, Maxwell, Jackson's chief technologist, played a pivotal role in scaling the operation ethically. He refined the proprietary technology, a fusion of bioengineering and quantum computing, that powered the impossible crops, ensuring it remained transparent and free from corporate overreach. Maxwell's team developed adaptive algorithms that learned from each site's environmental data, optimizing growth cycles without exploiting local resources. His insistence on open-source protocols for the tech sparked global collaboration, with scientists and farmers contributing to a shared knowledge base that prioritized ecological balance over profit. Yet, Maxwell remained vigilant, guarding against the temptation to weaponize the technology, aware of its potential to disrupt global food systems if mishandled. Eliza, the geopolitical strategist, navigated the complex web of international interests that swirled around the project. With 26 facilities spanning 6 continents, she brokered agreements between governments, NGOs, and local communities, ensuring the initiative didn't become a pawn in power struggles. Her diplomatic finesse turned skeptics into allies, convincing wary nations that the project's benefits, food security, economic stability, outweighed their fears of dependency. Eliza's foresight also anticipated tensions such as trade disputes over the crop's market impact or accusations of bioengineering overreach. She established a global council to oversee equitable distribution, ensuring that the technology uplifted vulnerable populations rather than deepening inequalities. At the heart of the Oklahoma site stood a crystalline pod, its translucent surface refracting sunlight into prismatic hues. Within it lay an architect, a being of unknown origin, suspended in stasis. This enigmatic figure was no mere artifact but a teacher, its presence hinting at knowledge far beyond humanity's current grasp. The pod's interface pulsed faintly, synchronized with an unseen countdown. In 37 days, the architect would awaken. Jackson, Maxwell, and Eliza each grappled with what this meant. Was the architect a guide to elevate humanity's potential or a judge of its readiness to wield such power? The pod's technology, while incomprehensible, seemed to resonate with the crop's growth as if the architect's influence extended even in dormancy. As the countdown ticked closer, the trio prepared for a moment that could redefine their mission and the world. The global facilities, meanwhile, were more than agricultural outposts, they were cultural and scientific melting pots. Local farmers worked alongside AI specialists, blending traditional knowledge with cutting-edge innovation. In Brazil, indigenous tribes taught soil restoration techniques that enhanced the tech's output. In Japan, robotic pollinators mimicked ancient beekeeping practices. Each site became a testament to human ingenuity, unified by Jackson's vision of a world where scarcity was a relic of the past. Yet, whispers of the architect's impending awakening stirred unease. Some saw it as a divine omen, others as a threat to autonomy. Eliza's council worked to temper these fears, emphasizing that the architect's role, whatever it might be, would be shaped by humanity's collective choices. As the 37-day mark approached, Jackson stood on his Oklahoma hilltop, gazing at the fields that had once been dust. The crystalline pod glowed faintly in the distance, a silent promise of answers. Maxwell fine-tuned the tech, ensuring it could adapt to whatever the architect revealed. Eliza, ever the diplomat, prepared a global address to unite nations in anticipation. Together, they braced for a future where the impossible had already taken root, and where the true test of humanity's readiness was yet to come. The unfinished fence post stood as a solitary monument, its weathered wood jutting from the soil like a sentinel marking the edge of Jackson's $500 plot of land. What had begun as a modest purchase, a patch of earth in the vast, untamed Midwest, was no longer just a homestead. It had become the cornerstone of humanity's next chapter, a fulcrum for a future shaped by forces both ancient and cosmic. Jackson, a man of simple ambitions, had dreamed only of a quiet life, perhaps a small cabin where he could watch the seasons turn. But the land held secrets older than the stars, and his choice to claim it had set in motion a plan crafted millennia ago by the architects, enigmatic beings whose designs transcended time. 3 observers, cloaked in shimmering, almost translucent forms, stood watch at the periphery of the plot. Their presence was subtle, their voices a harmonic whisper carried on the wind, guiding Jackson without ever fully revealing their purpose. They were not human, nor were they gods, but something in between, custodians of the architect's vision, tasked with ensuring the land's potential was realized. They spoke of the network, a vast, invisible system woven into the earth and sky, now awakening under their careful stewardship. Above, the heavens confirmed their work. Auroras, vivid and untamed, rippled across the night sky in hues of emerald and violet. These were no ordinary northern lights but a manifestation of the network's environmental labor, a signal that the land was healing, recalibrating the world's fragile balance in ways Jackson could only begin to comprehend. Jackson stood at the fence post, his calloused hands gripping its splintered edge, staring out at the horizon where the auroras pulsed in rhythm with his own heartbeat. His $500 investment, scraped together from years of odd jobs and quiet savings, had unlocked something boundless, a legacy that would outlast him, perhaps outlast humanity itself. The architect's plan, though still shrouded in mystery, was unfolding with relentless precision. The observers had hinted at its scope, a world remade, not through destruction but through harmony, with Jackson's land as the seed from which a new era would grow. The network was not just machines or code but a living, breathing force, drawing energy from the Earth's core and the cosmos alike, knitting together ecosystems and energies long fractured by human neglect. Yet, for all its grandeur, the moment felt deeply personal. Jackson's dream had been small, but it had been enough to align with the architect's vision. He thought of his late father, who had taught him to trust the land, and of his daughter, now grown and living far away, who might one day stand on the same soil and see what he could not. The auroras flared brighter, casting their glow across the unfinished fence post, and Jackson felt a quiet certainty settle in his chest. His life, once ordinary, was now entwined with something eternal. The monument before him was not just a marker of his land but a testament to the truth that even the smallest choices made with hope could ripple across the ages.